Good YouTube. We got a video from the GOAT, a legend on the channel. We got a video from the dog, Ty Learned. We got every Conqueror from weakest to strongest in One Piece. He's one of our favorite content creators when it comes to like anything like power scaling related or verse related because he kind of avoids leaps in logic and he just gets into it. As always, you're going to pre-fire a little like on the vidski. As always, make sure you have the notifications on. Help get my guy to 70K. As always, the main man Slides, sliding on timeline to provide you some content. Feel me? Before the video starts, comment down below, 77. And remember, no matter how far you go down the wrong road, it's never too late to turn back. You feel me? Talk to me.
Conqueror's Haki is the pinnacle of power in the One Piece verse and is a power only a handful of people can truly utilize to its peak. This power not only allows you to counter any Devil Fruit ability, but represents strong will that pirates are supposed to carry, and it's now confirmed to be the best counter against Emu and the Holy Knight's power.
It's the best counter against everything,
bro.
It
got me thinking, who is the strongest Conqueror Haki user and who is the weakest? For this list, the only rules I'm establishing are...
You could tell he has like a power scaler brain. I would get... if he was like, yeah, it got me thinking like who's the strongest Conqueror's user, like they're gonna be the most useful in the story, or they're like probably a very relevant character. He said it immediately made me start thinking who's the weakest and who's the strongest. Like that to me is power scaler coded, gang. Like instead of like, because strongest is very like, again, like he said, it's important in the narrative of the story. It says a lot about willpower. You feel me? So it's like, thinking about who's the strongest to me is like a very like general normal train of thought. But who's the weakest? It's like there's people who don't use it, you know. But to think like, oh, this is something that makes people strong. Who's the weakest? Who's the strongest? I think that's very power scalar oriented. That's not like a diss or anything. It's just interesting. It shows you that he's really invested in his craft. You know, he's wired different.
Or that we are not including people that should or possibly could have this power up, meaning no admirals, Mihawk, or Blackbeard, or anyone.
So people who are confirmed to use it on screen.
We're going to be doing this in a tier list type format, and with me today I have none other than the Chad Champ, who's going to be helping me break down this list of Conquerors.
That's the actual name.
You know me, the GOAT.
Who is this guy again?
No bull.
These are pretty much all of the Conqueror users. We got the old versions and the prime versions of the characters, and yeah.
Oh, old and prime? I see Rayleigh. Oh, so this is old Rayleigh, this is prime Rayleigh. Yeah, old Kaban, prime Kaban. Yeah, okay, I see it now.
With that being said, let's just get into the bottom tier, and thankfully we do not have Usta's Kid. That will be for later on.
Youth this mid.
We actually have old Chinjao.
Yeah, get Chinjao.
Flamingo.
Yeah.
And Katakuri.
Yeah, I mean, so the justification.
Yeah, Doflamingo doesn't really use. We know he has Conquerors, but he has no feats with Conquerors. At first, I was gonna be like, why would you put him there? But like, he doesn't really use Conquerors. He doesn't even have Conquerors coding, if I'm not mistaken. We just know he has the ability to knock people out with Conquerors. Like, that's the easiest level of Conquerors you could have. And I see why you put Chinchao there, because if you're talking prime Chinchao, he was boxing with Garp. We know Garp has Conquerors, so maybe Chinchao has Conquerors coding, but there's no feats for that.
For all these guys being together in one tier, despite the power creeping between, you know, the
different characters
between Dressrosa and Whole Cake.
Yeah,
because they're just kind of like so far removed even from what base Luffy could do after his Udon training in Wano. But for their respective arcs, they were super strong. To be fair, you know, Jinzhou, despite being out of his prime and you know losing his desire to pursue his dream, he was still clashing with Elephant Gun Luffy. Doflamingo, despite having his insides fucked up, having the bird cage passively ongoing in the background for the entire arc, fighting Law beforehand and all this kind of stuff, he was still able to do pretty well, you know, once he got his awakening out against initial Gear 4th Luffy. And then Katakuri just kind of closed all those guys. You know, he fought post not only Doflamingo but post Cracker, and they pretty much just stalemated really. And like Luffy barely won. The only real thing about Katakuri is that his stats aren't that good. Like he's kind of carried by his future sight ability, you know, his advanced observation haki, but he's still a beast.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, Katakuri is the only character on this list that might contend with a Tobi Roppo purely because of his future sight alone. But like physically speaking, this guy is legit made.
He doesn't have any crazy.
And one headbutt from ulti would legit one-shot Katakuri and Doflamingo probably.
Based off the feats.
With that being said, following up on this tier, we have Boa, then Old Gaban and Rayleigh, and then lastly Ace.
Have we seen any Conqueror's feats from Rayleigh? We've seen the auction, but okay, I get it. People who have feats, but their feats with Conquerors is not like too crazy. Gabon has good Conquerors like feats kinda in the manga, but if we're going anime, Gabon not being in his prime, and then like I'm sure some of the feats in the manga were like flashbacks too. Then like okay, this is valid because at this point, the people who are here are people who don't use Conquerors mainly for combat. Only feats with Conquerors for real is like knocking people out, or we know of them having Conquerors. Same thing with this tier, but we know their hockey mastery is higher. Ace was said to have all three types. We've seen flashbacks. If I were to guess, Gorosei is going to be up there. If it goes up to A tier, Gorosei is probably going to be B or A. Well, no, because they're going into stats and scaling as well. So Gorosei is going to be pretty high. Kaido should be decently high. Emu might be at the top. I didn't even peep. They have Roger up here too.
The characters in this tier can pretty much beat Tobiroppo level opponents pretty comfortably and potentially reach that top tier of Yonko Commander. Boa is stated to be on par with the likes of S-Snake, who beat Frankie on Egghead, the same guy who mogged on Sasaki. Gabon in Elbaf.
See, bro, it's that power scaling monster.
Is clumping on base Luffy and should just be relative to the likes of old Rayleigh, who can fight Kizaru for a whopping 5 minutes before huffing and puffing. And if we do want to use that 100 times statement at face value, this would imply that Rayleigh is actually a lot stronger than we give him credit for, but I really don't believe in this statement, and I actually think Luffy got much stronger than that. Anywho, Rayleigh as well was also able to save Boa from Blackbeard, implying maybe Rayleigh wouldn't lose to her in a fight, but that's more so canon than anything. And you guys may be wondering why Ace is here, because
Ace has Conquerors
into his Conqueror's hockey, but even despite this, we see him rivaling the likes of Marco, clashing and moving relative on par with the likes of the Admirals during Marineford. Now, I don't think Ace is actually on the same level as Akainu or Aokiji because, well, this happened. But the fact still stands that he has comparable feats to Marco, who fought a stronger Kizaru, or at least a more impressive one, compared to the one that Rayleigh fought, and mogged on two stronger Beast Commanders, that being King and Queen, at the same time. This tier is pretty much like you can last more than 2 pages against a Yonko or an Admiral, pretty much, but you're still not that guy.
You said however, more than 2 pages.
Is where we really start to get some of the heavy hitters involved. Now, in this tier, we have the fighters during the Onigashima raid, that being Kid, Odin, Yamato, and Zoro. Now, Odin and Kid...
And I don't think this makes this a bad list, but again, being that it goes to A tier, and you have people like Emu and the Gorosei, they get power clipped. Luffy has to be higher than Zoro. They're not on the same tier when it comes to Conquerors. Luffy was boxing Kaido with Conquerors, going band for band. And then on top of that, we have Shanks in here. They have Loki in here, who's relative to Shanks, and Loki is no slouch. They have Prime Chinchou, the continent splitter in a bit. Prime, Garp, and Roger, the literal Pirate King. Rock's decent back on the list. It's like Luffy is not in that tier yet because if he was, the story would be much closer to its end. So if A is the highest destroying go, some of those characters I just named are A, Luffy would be B tier. And if Luffy's B tier, Zoro's either lower B tier or higher C tier. So I'm not mad at this.
Honestly, pretty contentious. And I know what you guys are probably thinking right now. Why on earth is Mr. Colored of Mild Annoyance on the same tier as 2 Advanced Conqueror users? And to that, I say it's simply because of Bro's Devil Fruit and his feats during the Onigashima raid. Now, as a hockey user, especially in the anime, this guy probably has the worst representation of Conqueror's hockey. I'm talking...
True, but we do know for some of these characters, you need Conquerors to, like, box them, basically. And Kid was able to do damage to characters like that, which implies that he's at a decent point. Even to the point where Shanks and, like, the little future he didn't like, he was going to be able to destroy the ship. I don't know if he's going to be able to kill everybody, but it was definitely going to be a mild inconvenience because he would have destroyed their ship.
Nami has better implications of having Conqueror's hockey, and she doesn't even have Conqueror's hockey. However, a lot of people like to just say Kid simply sucks ass and move along.
No, because it mentions that if you have a high enough, like hockey, Devil Fruit abilities don't matter. That's why Gamma Knife, something that should have killed Dofi, did not kill Dofi. Law and Dofi just weren't in the same tier. Like, that is a very lethal technique. It's just at a high enough tier, hacks don't work. Kind of like Dragon Ball. A high enough key, certain abilities lose their effect.
Him any credit during his fight against Big
Or
Mom.
at least the effect
Everyone
is
likes
reduced.
to forget Hawkins was legit killing Bro while he was fighting a Yonko and was still able to push her to the absolute limit and was just as much of a contribution. A lot of people like to say Law just simply carried Kid, but these two needed each other
they went
in order
crazy
to actually win, and the story itself even backs this up. So regardless of your agenda, yes, even Kid is able to press some of the strongest hockey users in the verse. I mean, look up
I'm not mad at
template,
that.
you know, the same guy that he's harming just so happens to be a Conqueror herself. That should put it into perspective as to how strong Kid is. Odin versus Kid is really weird, especially since Big Mom technically should scale to a stronger base Kaido than the one Odin fights.
Right.
But I feel like Kid would be too stupid to really end the fight fast enough, leaving Odin open for a potential W. It's really weird though, because Odin can either be a lot higher on the list
really
or
higher,
below Kid. It's really depending on your interpretation.
You just averaged it out.
I would say in a normal versus setting, Kid would probably lose to Odin. Now, do I think Odin would be able to tank a damn punk to the face?
For
Probably
sure
not. However, I think a good comparison between these two would be the Roger Divine Departure and Shanks' Divine Departure. While Roger probably wasn't using as much killing intent as Shanks was, this Roger is stronger than the one that was shown on God Valley, and Odin didn't take crazy damage from this attack. Meanwhile, Kid got absolutely bodied even when Killer tried intercepting it. Now, like I said, Odin's scaling is really weird, and he could potentially be either at the bottom of this tier or possibly even higher. But in my opinion, Zoro and Yamato have stronger arguments compared to Kid.
Facts.
They fight a stronger Kaido,
and I still wouldn't put them higher.
And grow from their experiences in Wano. For reference, Yamato during the beginning of the raid had to rely on her fruit against Sasaki to whacking an admiral in base even when not fully trying to fight.
That's green
and
fraud.
Being acknowledged as strong. Now Yamato does fight Kaido for a prolonged period of time. However, Zoro is able to outpace the same Kaido that Yamato is just stalling at best, and he was able to scar him before punching out. And then, of course, during his battle with King, he would go on to tap into more of the conquerors, and then surpassing his Asura self by the end of his fight with King. Meaning, this version of Zoro should just be able to do the same thing that he did to Kaido, and then
without passing out.
Now, next up, we have the Gorosei, which I will admit is a weird tier to talk about, which...
It is. So it goes above S tier. We have the Gorosei under Kaido and Big Mom. Which is interesting because they're supposed to be like under Emu, who is like an endgame threat. But we did see them get backed off, and some of them even got knocked out from Joy Boy's Haki. That's not to say Joy Boy's Haki is weak, but Luffy tanked that Haki. Kaido is someone with relative, if not higher Haki than Luffy. And if Luffy tanked it, then, you know, even though Luffy's like stronger, I guess, because, you know, he got the dub off. Kaido got jumped and was fighting for like days at a time. Luffy would Gear 5 the whole way. And like with the advancement he is now, yeah, it's probably a better fight. But it's not a fight where like, oh, he beat him. Yeah, that means Luffy can win 80% of the time. I give it like 70-30, and I think that's probably generous. But you feel me? Well, he was contending with Kizaru, which says something. But these same Gorosei members, if I'm not mistaken, some of them got knocked out by Joy Boy's Haki, and Luffy was able to survive it. So
I'm going to be leaving to
Chad. Too bad.
I can't stand talking about the Gorosei. These guys are so fraudulent.
Frauds,
honestly. They shouldn't even be on this list. They're lucky they have Conqueror's Haki.
We all know the only thing that matters in regards to those guys is aura. You know, we saw Lucci just get checked by Mars's aura. Nosturo carrying the aura in the animation department in the anime. But as for why they're there in the tier list, I mean, it's just because the guys underneath them can't really properly use advanced Conqueror's Haki, and they can't overcome their like cracked region. So Zoro didn't even know that he really had that. Like Gaban had to, you know, bring it up to him. You know, he's kind of called it.
Also, just based off how they're scaling this, it's every Conqueror from weakest to strongest. So it's not necessarily every Conqueror from weakest Conqueror's Haki to strongest Conqueror's Haki, which narratively, if they're stronger, they should have stronger Conqueror's Haki. But what the video is talking about is everyone who's a Conqueror and then essentially putting them in 1v1s. That's why he brought up the Kid conversation. That's why right here, he's saying those in the lower tiers don't have advance, so they can't handle their region. So this is like a power scaling situation. It's just amongst people that are Conquerors in verse.
Can you be the voice captain, you know, the wing to Luffy, Yonko, if you don't even know how to use advanced Conquerors? And again, Yamato can't use it on that level either. And they both get drained massively when they are kind of like getting close to using that ability anyway. The Gorosei just get carried by pure regen cheese alone. But we are going to acknowledge that the strongest member of the Gorosei Walkyrie can utilize what's called a Conqueror's Roar, and this is a notable move that even Luffy was taken aback by. And then, like I said earlier, we have Mars, who was able to just check Lucci alone with his aura. So, but other than that, the rest of the Gorosei can't really say they did anything, to be honest. I mean, I guess you could say,
no
Saint
feats,
Saturn was consistently used by Emu as a medium to express power. But I mean, that guy's dead now, so it doesn't even matter. Bro got erased. Unironically, the guys below him just can harm them, but the regen factor is just too much. Ray gone. They're just too old now. The stamina's not there. Pretty cheesy.
True.
Now, next up are pretty much just the
Yonko
minus Shanks.
Top
Big
tiers.
Mom is here purely just because she's a Yonko, and if she didn't have the battle IQ of a Cantaloupe, she'd probably be higher on the list. Everyone above her actually uses this power consistently.
See? He has Kaido over Luffy. And you could argue, like, oh, this isn't, like, actually, like, in order. But he had Kid in front of Odin, then he moved Odin in front of Kid. Chinchou lowest. Doflamingo's whooping Chinchou. Katakuri's whooping Dofi. She was boxing Blackbeard, she's whooping Katakuri. He's whooping, like, it's just power cliff. But also here, one was a right hand man, one was boxing Kizaru for like 5 minutes. So his feats are just higher. He really don't have too many good feats except for the fact that he was going blow for blow with some of the admirals, so you just put him higher just naturally. And then power cliff. So then you have Kid, Odin. Yeah, so far it seems like a power based thing. And yeah, Luffy was seen as that beat Kaido. But like like he said, her battle IQ was that of a Cantaloupe. Not to mention with Gear 5, I put, like, being generous to Luffy, I said, like, he's beating Kaido, like, 60-40. But realistically, that win don't really mean much. Because Kaido had low stamina, and Kaido was boxing for days at a time. So in a regular one-on-one situation, he's probably winning that. It's actually the other way around. 40 Luffy, 60 Kaido. Or if you want to be, generous, not overly generous, but regular generous, just say 50-50. But Kaido has more experience as a pirate, things of that nature. So this is not a bad scaling here. And we know Shanks made Fraud Bull, go home. So we know Shanks is considerably tough.
People even below her utilize advanced conquerors more consistently than her, which is funny because how does Zoro use this power more consistently than her, and he doesn't even know how to use this power?
Yeah, he didn't even know like what it was called.
Use advanced conquerors is against a goddamn Tobiropo. Like, what are we talking about here, bro? Luffy and Kaido are not only able to utilize this power a lot more effectively, but they just are simply stronger than Big Mom. I don't think anybody really disagrees here. Luffy versus Kaido is definitely contentious, especially if you think Luffy got a lot stronger since Wano. However, until we actually see the result of this power creep and maybe him pressing the likes of Loki or something during Elbaf, I would still say due to Kaido not only being severely nerfed and weakened due to multiple fighters and multiple during negation attacks factoring in, but also the fact that he was holding up Onigashima while legit fighting Luffy and then pushed him to use his full power to just barely lose. I don't think I can confidently say Luffy just mid-diss Kaido now because of 2 arcs happening after Wano, especially when he wasn't even pressed during the likes of Egghead, and we haven't even seen what he can truly do during Elbaf. So for now, Kaido is at the top of this tier, and in the next tier, we pretty much have the
Roger in there,
Shanks, along with pretty much any of the top
Roger's higher,
including Roger, White,
I'm about to say
Rocks, and Emu.
Yeah,
I won't lie, guys. The only reason Prime Goban and Prime Rayleigh are here is purely because of that glaze on if you think Prime Rayleigh can actually take on current Blackbeard. Other than that, these two are probably fraudulent and are
probably fraud.
But let's not even talk about that. We're just gonna put them on the list for the sake of people who want them on the list. Anywho, they're not really had aura, let's talk about the actual scaling. I'm gonna be passing the mic on to Chadwick.
Alright, so Standard Shonen, these guys are pretty
Hold on.
I'm gonna be passing the mic on.
Who's that at the bottom? Is that Joy Boy?
Chadwick.
Alright, so Standard Shonen Trope, these guys
just threw everybody in here.
The top tiers of the previous generation, and they're still relevant now, even towards the latter end of the One Piece story. But to start off, we have Ultimate Goku. Doesn't really do anything besides clash with Blackbeard once he gets the Guru Guru no Mi initially. So really, we're going to look at Garp, who he's meant to be rivals with, and Garp is able to fight against Aokiji. While he has to look after Kobe,
good scaling.
He has to watch out for sneak attacks from the rest of Blackbeard.
Other people,
Garp still does really well despite being out of his prime, something that's mentioned numerous times.
And they're both emotion nerfs.
Again, with the tropes, it's a trope that they use for pretty much all the old in One Piece. And to branch off from that, we have old Whitebeard. Old Whitebeard couldn't even use observation haki properly, and was off the meds, and he could still fight on par with Sakazuki during Marineford. Obviously, eventually he gets a bit overwhelmed, but that's only because he starts having heart attacks mid-fight. And then we've got Harold. So Harold, the reason why he's at the bottom of like the actual prime guys from the old generation is because Loki is just above him, based on the scaling, like the Zoe and Hammer scaling. He's in Domu Reverse Eye, which is an amp. It is a physical amp. He's like, now that I have this, I finally have the strength to pick up Ragnar.
I feel you.
Mythical devil fruit that has been locked behind like the vault in Elbaf for years. Loki, on the other hand, did not need that. In fact, he was encouraged to go and pursue the devil fruit, and obviously to get the devil fruit you have to first pass Ragnar. Loki not only passes Ragnar but earns it as his own tool, and then gets to utilize the devil fruit. He then beats Reverse Eye Harold again, own tool.
See a horse with horns. Is this like a Sleipnir reference? Because like Loki in mythology is the father of Sleipnir. He became a horse. I mean, I think he became a woman. No, he didn't. Did he? Yeah, it'd be getting crazy in mythology, gang. But yeah, I think Sleipnir reference, that could be the fruit too, because we know zones are like the peak of devil fruits for real. At the highest tiers.
He then beats Domu Reverse Eye Harold again.
Hey,
might not be that valid depending on how you look at it. But the point was to show that his advanced Conqueror's haki is cracked. He can put down Domu Reverse Eye Being, and we see how OP those guys are in the God Valley flashback with Rob.
Gotcha.
And then we have Shanks. I mean, his main thing really here being above Loki is that he just beat Loki, and he beat
Loki that puts him pretty.
Devil Fruit with Ragnar for a long amount of time. We've been about 3 or 4 years since he beat Harold. But then you also have the Dorian Broggy statement, where when they are exposed to Joy Boy's haki, they're like, "Whoa, this is almost this is almost as strong as like Red Hair's. This is as strong as Red Hair's ? Depending on the translation you use."
There was no hostility to it.
As the linchpin for quality of haki.
Right.
Very impressive.
Now, like I said, Prime Rayleigh and Gabon honestly shouldn't even be on the list. They are really just feetless, but not only are they stated to be, the wings of Roger, but it is implied that Prime Rayleigh may or may not be able to beat Blackbeard.
Right now,
so take the placements with a grain of salt. You don't really have to take it too seriously.
It could be fraudulent,
above things, we do have Prime Chinjiao, Sengoku, Whitebeard, Garp, Roger,
real hitters.
Now, all of these guys pretty much all have one common thing, and it's that they are much stronger than the initial versions of their God Valley selves. Obviously, Brox gets amped by Emu. Roger and Garps managed to beat him down just barely in a 2-on-1. Whitebeard is relative to these two in this arc, and we know that all three of them go on to grow stronger. Sengoku keeps up with Prime Garp, so he too would also be growing stronger despite him not even participating in God Valley. And obviously, Emu's above all of them because even despite taking a combo attack from legit
it's the main character,
guys, he just survives. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I do think Emu himself probably is pretty fragile and just has ridiculous hacks and abilities.
Yeah, but it's the haki that carries him.
Yeah. He also just has probably the craziest feat in the entire series, so there's that as well.
Lucia? Hold on.
Probably the craziest feat.
We can't sell any closer. It doesn't like the whole class on itself. There's no trace of it. I think it's a Lucia. Are we saying he did that with his haki? I thought it was a meteor cannon.
In the entire series, so there's that as well.
Alright, now last but certainly not least, we have the man himself, Joy Boy.
Usta's kid! Oh.
Get this out of my face.
When it comes to Joy Boy, I mean, I don't know what's really to be said other than had the Emu sweating.
That and the fact that Emu is what we're considering like the peak, and Joy Boy is the one who has him struggling, and a singular haki knot from Joy Boy, the quality was on par, if not greater than Shanks. And there's a singular haki knot that's been sitting there for ages. Like Joy Boy is like Void Century, which is like 100 to 1,000 years. I think it's 100 years. I don't know why 1,000 came on my. No, it can't just be 100 because like the Unks in One Piece live for a long time. But it's 100 years of information. Like it's a century of a void, but the time period from then to now is very, very huge. So yeah, like thousands of years. And that haki knot was still at Shanks' level. So assuming like everything else, haki has the ability to degrade, unless you're making a claim that his haki doesn't have the ability to degrade, which puts it at a crazier tier. Like, because even if my haki like is at say Shanks' level, if I was able to use that with a hockey that was like just permanently at that level infinitely, in theory, or for at least 1,000 years, that means while fighting anyone, you're never gonna run out of reserves. There's never a, oh man, I can't give it my all anymore. It's like infinite, And so that would be a crazy feat in and of itself. But assuming it degrades, has a decay rate like everything else, for it to have been decaying for thousands of years and still be at that level says that it was at such a high peak before then, and says a lot towards Stormboy's power.
Says, Emu kind of fears this man, and that hacky, there was no malicious intent behind that. It was kind of just hacky, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was casual hockey. Yeah, and it still knocked people out.
So yeah, I mean, he just cracked.
I zoomed out for y'all so you guys can see the entire list.
W list, W tie. That was Conquerors from weakest to strongest. As always, appreciate y'all boys for watching. Make sure you stay happy, healthy, and hydrated. As always, time to catch me next. Peace.